Hello and welcome to What the Just Happened Today, your essential guide to the daily shock and awe in national politics. I'm Joe Amditis. Let's get to it. It's Monday, February 8th, 2021. Welcome to Day 20. The coronavirus variant first found in the United Kingdom, known as B.1.17, is spreading rapidly across the United States, doubling roughly every 10 days. The variant is more contagious than earlier forms of the coronavirus, may be more lethal, and the CDC warned that B.1.17 could become the predominant strain in the U.S. by March. Meanwhile, South Africa halted the use of the AstraZeneca vaccine after evidence emerged that it offered only minimal protection against mild-moderate disease caused by B.1.351, another variant which was first seen in that country. The B.1351 variant has already spread to at least 32 countries, including the United States. Pfizer and Moderna, however, both say that studies indicate their vaccines should grant protection against both variants, but are less effective against B.1351. Biden called the Trump administration's handling of the pandemic, including the number of vaccine doses that were made available, even more dire than we thought. He added that it would be difficult to vaccinate most of the United States by summer. The House of Representatives asked the Biden administration to release documents related to the Trump administration's response to the coronavirus pandemic in order to understand the full scope and impact of efforts by the Trump White House to suppress coronavirus testing. In a letter to White House Chief of Staff Ron Klain, the House Select Subcommittee on the Coronavirus Crisis alleged that the Trump administration refused to cooperate with its inquiries and that Trump officials failed to fully comply with 2 subpoenas and at least 20 document requests by the committee. The letter focuses on Trump administration advisor Dr. Paul Alexander, who downplayed the importance of testing people without symptoms and allegedly tried to suppress scientific data and pressure members of the White House Coronavirus Task Force to alter public information. In August, the CDC changed its COVID-19 testing guidance to say that people without symptoms do not necessarily need a test, even if they were exposed to an infected person. But in September, the CDC reversed the guidance, saying that anyone, including those without symptoms, who has been in contact with an infected person needs a COVID-19 test. Congressional Democrats are expected to propose providing up to $3,600 per child to families as part of Biden's $1.9 trillion COVID-19 relief package. Under the proposal, the IRS would send $3,600 per child under the age of 6, or $3,000 per child for children aged 6 to 17, phasing out the payments for those earning more than $75,000 a year and couples who earn more than $150,000. Moving on, Biden's proposal to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour would result in 1.4 million job losses, but would lift 900,000 Americans out of poverty by 2025 and would raise the income for 17 million people. This according to a new study from the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office. In its cost assessment of Biden's Raise the Wage Act of 2021, the CBO said that the minimum wage increase would also increase the budget deficit by $54 billion over 10 years. While Biden said he didn't expect the measure to make it into the $1.9 trillion coronavirus relief package, he said he was prepared for a separate negotiation to raise the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour from the current level of $7.25 per hour. Biden said, "Look, no one should work 40 hours a week and live below the poverty wage. And if you're making less than $15 an hour, you're living below the poverty wage." Meanwhile, Biden instructed the State Department to re-engage with the United Nations Human Rights Council, reversing the Trump administration's decision to withdraw nearly 3 years ago. The U.S. withdrew from the council in 2018, calling the council a cesspool of political bias that is a hypocritical and self-serving organization that makes a mockery of human rights and is not worthy of its name. Trump made the comments after the UN's human rights chief called Trump's policy of separating children at the border unconscionable. Moving on, Biden referred to Trump's erratic behavior unrelated to the insurrection and said Trump should not receive intelligence briefings, even though they typically have been given to former presidents. Biden added, "I just think that there is no need for him to have the intelligence briefings. What value is giving him an intelligence briefing? What impact does he have at all, other than the fact that he might slip and say something? Meanwhile, Trump's attorneys argued that the insurrection at the Capitol was perpetrated by people of their own accord and for their own reasons, and not because Trump called on them to march on Congress and fight like hell. Trump's lawyers accused House Democrats of engaging in political theater driven by Trump derangement syndrome, and asserted in a new filing that Trump's speech before the attack did not direct anyone to commit unlawful actions, and that he deserved no blame for the conduct of a small group of criminals because he was engaged in free speech protected by the First Amendment when he questioned the election results. Trump's lawyers also argued that the Senate lacks jurisdiction and cannot convict a former president, calling the effort patently ridiculous. House impeachment managers, however, said we live in a nation governed by the rule of law, not mob violence incited by presidents who cannot accept their own electoral defeat. And finally, Paul Manafort cannot be prosecuted in New York after Trump's pardon. In October, a New York appeals court found that efforts to try Manafort for financial fraud violated the state's double jeopardy law, since Manafort had been convicted on similar charges in federal court. In December, Trump pardoned Manafort. However, the double jeopardy defense is unlikely to help Steve Bannon, who was also pardoned by Trump but had not been tried or convicted yet. And in the polls, the Washington Post says 67% of Americans approve of Biden's handling of the coronavirus. In October, 61% say they disapproved of Trump's response. Gallup says 52% of Americans favor their senators voting to convict Trump in his second Senate impeachment trial, while 45% prefer their senators to find him not guilty, and 3% say they're unsure. And the Associated Press says 16% of Americans say democracy is working well or extremely well, while 45% think democracy is not functioning properly, and another 38% say it's only working somewhat well.
That's all for now. You can find the links and sources for all of these stories on the main website. And as always, visit whatthefjusthappenedtoday.com for the latest news and headlines. Until next time, I'm Joe Amditas.